Leading the way on air, online, and on the go. From WLWT, this is Issues.
Hello everyone, I'm Courtis Fuller and welcome to Issues. Today we have a special guest with us. He has been the health commissioner here in Cincinnati for the past 10 years. Please welcome Dr. Noble Maseru to our program. Good to see you.
Great seeing you, Courtis.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are still currently the health commissioner, but May 1st is the date that you've decided to step away.
That's correct, yeah. It's been a wonderful opportunity to give service to Cincinnati. So after 10 years, we'll more or less go on a different journey.
Talk a little bit. I know that when you first came, people knew your background from Detroit, but just talk a little bit about your road to here in Cincinnati. What got you here?
Well, primarily it's because of my daughter and her husband. Kamal is a scientist at that time with Procter & Gamble, and my daughter is a veterinarian. So we decided that we would like to be involved in their life, specifically with the grandsons. So the two boys, Elijah and Noah, they are now, one is at the university in Chicago, and Elijah has just been not accepted, but he has given his notice to Howard that he will be in D.C.
Oh, excellent.
So he wishes to go into toxicology and sustainable energy, environmental justice in that area.
How are we doing here in Cincinnati in terms of the state of our health of Cincinnati? We've done a lot of reports over the past 10 years, and I know infant mortality is one thing that you've been passionate about, but just what's the state? If you had to do a state of the health of Cincinnati, how would we look? Well,
actually, we were asked to provide comment, our observation with the Tale of Two Cities report that Donna Jones Baker, then the executive director of the Cincinnati Urban League, commissioned that report. And so we contributed a chapter so the viewers can certainly take a peek at what we wrote. But generally, the World Health Organization has two indicators, two measures, which more or less are the barometer for a community or a nation's health. One is infant vitality, and the other one is life expectancy. And so in terms of life expectancy, Dr. Camille Jones and her team did a study, an analysis, where the life expectancy in 47 neighborhoods. Yes, we know there are 52 neighborhoods, but given the statistical piece, we won't go into that. Dr. Jones's group determined that the life expectancy for the city of Cincinnati was 76.2, which is roughly 2.5 years less than the national life expectancy of 78.6 or 0.8. The differential in neighborhoods was as low as 66 years of age in South Fairmont and as high as 88.8 in the Columbia-Tusculum
And that got a lot of attention because it was referred to as zip code. You know, based on your zip code, there was a life expectancy difference, significant, as you pointed out.
Exactly, in terms of neighborhood. So a 22-year differential. However, that in itself doesn't mean that there isn't more than enough opportunity for our city, Cincinnati, to narrow that disparity, that differential. New York City in 2001, 2002, the life expectancy for the city was 78 years. 10 years later, it is now 81. So they actually—
New York City.
New York City. Oh. So that's 8 million people, and so within a decade, New York extended the life expectancy for 3 years. Cincinnati can do the same thing. A report came out last week, the American Journal of American Public Health, JAMA. They did a study, and it was in New York Times, where it showed that poor persons who are in the lower quadrant could have extended life expectancy similar to individuals who are in a higher economic quadrant if that city provided amenities such as no smoking in the parks, for example. We know that in certain parks in the city of Cincinnati, that you can essentially light up a cigarette roughly 10 feet from the playground. Well, cities like New York, San Francisco, LA, they have laws that essentially prohibit smoking. And so this study essentially stated that those municipalities that had health interventions, such as not smoking, having bike paths, essentially having removing sodas in the lunchrooms, poor folks in those quadrants essentially benefited from those types of interventions.
And a lot of times, you know, especially like thinking of the sodas, when those ideas are placed before the public, a lot of times they get pushback, criticism. I know that there was a lot of criticism of programs initiated in New York, but when I hear your numbers, apparently they work. They
actually work, and that was Mayor Bloomberg. Again, New York City, 8 million people, infant mortality rate in New York City, 4.5. So in Cincinnati, we conducted an analysis that we were able to determine that the infant mortality rate was as low as 0 in some zip codes and as high as 32 in others. So we initiated an intervention that, with the collaboration of University Hospital and the Christ Hospital, American Mercy Home Nursing, and a couple of other home visitation agencies, we were able to initiate intervention that lowered the infant mortality rate, which during the period of 2006 and 2010, the IMR was 13.6. Well, guess what? When we initiated the intervention in 2013, the infant mortality rate went down to 9.8. So 13.6 to 9.8, a historical low. And then last year, 2015, Courtis, another historical low of 7.9.
Wow. Hold that thought. We'll take a break, and I want to pick it up right there because I also want to talk about disparities that still exist. We can talk about a lot, so we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Courtis Fuller, and here with me is the Health Commissioner for the City of Cincinnati, past 10 years, Dr. Noble Maseru. We were talking about what's taking place here in the state of health in Cincinnati and other places, and I asked you during the break if you had to pick these cities, a couple cities that are really doing it right, listening to the experts, listening to the needs of their various communities. Are there a few out there? You mentioned New York is doing some things right, but other cities?
Yeah, New York, population of 8 million folks, certainly Cincinnati, a population of 300,000. If New York can do 4.5, as you can see, Cincinnati is moving down to 7.9. The target for the nation is 6.0, so we're on the correct trajectory to reaching that infant vitality target. But other cities, certainly San Francisco, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and what those cities are doing, they're addressing the social environment. So for example, Dr. Jones and her team, led by Denisha Porter, creating healthy communities. It's a collaboration of more than 60 organizations, initiatives around tobacco-free zones, and one particular partner is the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority, where there won't be any smoking in the Housing Authority units. And so it's not just, okay, no smoking. We're providing, Denisha's group is providing support and intervention. So, and we're having collaboration with the Cincinnati Recreation Commission, wellness, and those kinds of fitness things. So the cities that provide those type of social amenities. So for example, our collaboration that we have with the Cincinnati public school system. Cincinnati is 34% poverty rate, number 3 in the nation. Childhood poverty, 44%, almost number 2.
Give me that stat again. I don't know if I'd heard that stat before.
Yeah, 34% poverty citywide. We're number 3 nationally. So when we look at extended life expectancy, we can do that. I've given you reasons and interventions that have been successful. The collaboration that we have with the Cincinnati public school system, Superintendent Mary Ronan, our department is the medical and public health consultant for CPS, which means that we're not just solely in the schools with our nurses, which is a great thing, our school-based health centers, which is a great thing, but we also have these other partnerships like Safe Routes to School, Carmen Burke, no idling within a certain perimeter of the school system. These are collaborations and partnerships that Dr. Marilyn Crumpton has worked with in terms of asthma, addressing asthma challenges because of the idling. We've kept kids out of the emergency room, our collaboration with the Children's Hospital. As a matter of fact, Dr. Crumpton has just been recognized as Pediatrician of the Year.
Is that so?
Yeah, so it's these types of interventions which are which are outside of the clinic, outside of the medical sphere. This 80% of health improvement is going to take place by addressing what is called the social determinants of health, meaning food, clothing, and shelter, these types of issues. And so I would like to certainly point out that 34% poverty for the city. For us to be successful, like San Francisco, Minneapolis, St. Paul, those cities, we have to deal with the poverty. How are we going to address poverty? Mm-hmm. And certainly there are ways to do that. There's no one way, but certainly there are multiple pathways to address poverty, to have a greater, an elevated lifestyle or well-being of our communities. And I can give you an example, more than one example, is how we could do that. Cincinnati, out of 728 markets, Cincinnati, the city of Cincinnati, ranks 650th out of 728th in terms of social mobility. So a family, a child that's born in poverty, has essentially will only have a 5% chance of leaving that lower quadrant and going up the ladder into the gateway for middle class. 5%. That means 95% of those children in that lower quadrant, they're trapped. However, there's a way to get out of that. There's more than one way, but we certainly have a suggestion that along with other cities that they've put in place to have families out of poverty. And one suggestion is the infrastructure. We know that the Metropolitan Sewer District, the Brent Spence Bridge, the I-75, 74 Martin Luther King interchange. What's occurring there, Courtis? What's happening there? Development, construction, right? So when we're driving through our neighborhoods and our communities, we should have a representative workforce or a workforce that's representative of our community and our city. 48% of our city is African American. Certainly at least perhaps 25 or 30% of that workforce should be tearing up those streets. And you know what the median income of those individuals who are tearing up those streets? $41,000. The gateway to the middle class is $38,000. So we know straight away that individuals who are in that lower quadrant can be working on those jobs. So we would probably advance or suggest, well, let's do a consent decree, similar to what Iris Rowley and them did in 2001, to essentially have an equitable representation. And that's what these other cities and these other successful inclusion, social inclusion cities are doing to bring their population, their citizens into the middle class. So let's do that.
And just so that I'm clear, at the beginning when you were talking about the poverty rate, I know that I've heard this figure in terms of the city, and you're referring to the entire city or
Correct.
Just the public school system? I want to make sure.
No, I'm saying the entire city.
Okay,
if we look at the
So
public school system now, 79% of the 34,000 enrollees at CPS are on a free or reduced lunch program. So that does not trap kids, because our kids in CPS, they can be and will be successful if we have this, let's wrap our arms around one another and work collaboratively as other cities are doing.
Hold your thought again.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back again. My guest this morning for the entire half hour, Dr. Noble Maseru, Health Commissioner for the City of Cincinnati, will be stepping down May 1st after 10 years here in the city. I guess what's next? We'll talk about what's next for you, what's next for the health department. That's a major change. It's an important entity in our city. So what's next?
Well, we have an extraordinary team. So we have a foundation. Ms. Joyce Tate, she's our CEO and Assistant Health Commissioner for our clinical and population services, which many of our your viewers know as the Cincinnati City Primary Care. We provide 45,000 folks with preventive and primary health care services. Dr. Crumpton, I mentioned our school and adolescent health folks, our bean counter, Robert Schlantz, fiscal guy, and just let me just say in terms of fiscal, when we arrived, $1 of the general fund, taxpayers' dollars, we would generate 89 cents. Well, today for that same $1, we're generating almost $3 of revenue. So it used to be $12 million revenue, now we're generating $38 million revenue. So we have a $48 million revenue. But to your point, Courtis, in terms of the other addition to our team is Dr. Odell Owens. I think you may know that gentleman, right?
Good friend.
So exactly, and so he is an extraordinary addition. Dr. Owens is our medical director, and the way this normally works is that our Board of Health, in concert with our Cincinnati City Primary Care Board of Governors, will essentially form a search team, national search, and out of that search team, they will identify a health commissioner. However, as I said, we have an extraordinary team. Dr. Owens' addition certainly buoys that up. Nancy Carter is doing a great job in terms of our dental services. And of course, Dr. Camille Jones, our resident big brain, she's doing extraordinary work in terms of our development. And
so officially there will be an interim, your assistant will serve as that interim, and
well, someone on that team it's expected, as things normally occur, will be the interim for that to take place.
And what about you? What's next for you?
For us, we have a few choices, but certainly the university academia is probably an area that I'll gravitate to. Additionally, for the department, I should say, we are also moving forward towards accreditation. So we expect to complete our accreditation, have that application submitted by the end of this month in May. So that's another milestone for our department.
We have a couple minutes left, and I know this question can't be answered in a couple minutes. But so many people hear about health issues, and clearly now more so than ever before, we're reminded of the politics of this thing we call health. Our life is politics.
Exactly.
The politics of that. I would imagine that probably, as someone who is in the profession, that probably is the hardest thing to deal with.
That and I would say personnel issues. So, but we're talking about, let's say, lead, flint.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fortunately, this city, Dr. Jones, Camille Jones, and her team, 8 years ago, ahead of the game in terms of lead poisoning prevention, et cetera, had a threshold of lead 5 micrograms per 10 deciliters. The standard at that time for the nation was 10. So what is taking place is Dr. Jones essentially and her team, they have led the way for assessing lead poisoning prevention in the city of Cincinnati. Here's the good news. 99.3% of the children that have been assessed with that screening mechanism are lead safe. That's great news. So this is the advantage of the city of Cincinnati in terms of when you're talking about the politics of health, meaning that Dr. Jones is out in front of it. 6 years later, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they adopted the standard that Dr. Jones and her team put in place. So nationally, that standard is 5 to 9 now. So that's a good thing.
Well, it's been a good thing that you've been here for 10 years. There's been a lot of issues. I mean, there are a dozen things that we could have talked about. How much time do I have left? Because I have 45 seconds. This whole piece on violence, I mean, that's a health issue, right?
Correct.
That people should not take for granted.
And so we do have a collaboration with the Cincinnati Police Department, Chief Elliott, but also Iris Rowley in terms of collaboration, community, strategic partnerships with the community, but jobs must be included in that. So that poverty intervention piece that I mentioned in terms of economic inclusion, that is key. Without that, along with CPS, Cincinnati Public School System, we are not going to succeed. So let's do what we do with our city and be aggressive in our neighborhoods as we have been aggressive in terms of development and over the Rhine.
All right, they gave me that rep. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We'll be back in a moment. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Again, my thanks to the Health Commissioner here in the city of Cincinnati, and we wish him well as he moves on beginning May 1st. That's all the time we have. Have a nice day.
Thank you.